Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do, a podcast that talks about human development and psychology to try and help you maybe figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. Man, last time we were talking about heterosexual activity, and we're going to take back up on that. So keep the giggling to a minimum. Non-coital forms of genital sexual activity, such as oral sex and mutual masturbation. I'm assuming y'all know what that is. If you don't, Google it. I ain't explaining it to you. Are fairly common and may begin in early adolescence. So, these young kids, they can do things. Like, I remember when I was in the 5th grade, me and my girlfriends came up with this baseball style analogy of how far you could go, based on your age, because we knew a girl who got pregnant at a young age, and we were like appalled. Oh my gosh, So it was like 10, 11, and 12, you can get to first base, which was kissing. 13, 14, 15, you could get to second base, which was, upper feelings. And then 16 and 17, you could get to third base, which was, below the belt feelings. And then you could have sex once you were 18 and grown and ready to have a baby. Yeah. Kids think about this stuff. Don't think they don't. Many young people do not regard these activities as sex, but as substitutes for or precursors of sex. So see, we were kind of mistaken back in the day when we were thinking like that. Some even define them as abstinence. Not so much. You're not actually doing the deed, but you basically are, In a 1992 study in New York suburban high schools, oral sex was more frequent than intercourse. Even middle school girls said they had been pressured into fellatio with the argument that it's not really sex. In 1995, nearly 50% of 15 to 19-year-old boys in a national study reported having received oral sex, as compared with the less than 40% in 1998. So, it's happening. Whether you parents want to think it's happening or not, facts are it's happening, and you need to talk with your kids before this stuff starts happening so they have little knowledge and they're not going into things ignorant and getting themselves into trouble. The proportion more than doubled among black boys, from 25% to 57%. 1 in 7 of those boys had not had intercourse. 11% of the sample reported having had anal sex, which again, you can get STDs, AIDS, things from anal sex. So again, you need to talk to your kids about this stuff before they're doing this stuff, so that you can head off trouble. These statistics are of concern because, contrary to what many adolescents believe, oral and anal sex involve risk of sexually transmitted disease. So the kids are still ignorant. They don't understand that this is still, even though you're not putting it in and ejaculating into the woman, you can still get sexually transmitted diseases. So again, you need to talk to your kids, make sure they understand that basically this is still sex. It's just a different form of sex. Homosexual identity and behavior. Now, there are some people who believe that's a sin. There are some people who definitely don't want to hear this. That's okay. You can turn it off right now. You're not going to hurt my feelings, because I'm doing this for the people who do want to hear this and understand. So, there you go. The sexual evolution has brought more acceptance of homosexuality in the United States. And that's because more people talk about it. I mean, I've heard my parents back in the day talking about so-and-so was a closet homosexual. And evidently between, the great-grandparents and their coming-up days, that's how it was described, because people didn't tell, because they knew they'd get ostracized and maybe, just what, in the 90s, we had a boy killed down south who was, murdered because he was gay. This is insanity. If homosexuality happens in nature, which it does, then it's natural. And there's so much evidence that points to that, that if you're not ignorant and you do a little research and talk to some people about it, you'll realize it is a thing. It's not a common thing, but it is a natural thing that happens. In 1995, 31% of 240,882 college freshmen in a major survey said homosexual relations should be prohibited, which was down from 53% in 1987. So, as recently as 1987, over half the college students that had been surveyed said gay sex should be prohibited. So, in the 90s it was up to 31. We're doing better than that now. And people are starting to realize it's a thing. It's not a deviant, unnatural, sinful thing. It's just a thing. Still, teenagers who openly identify as gay or lesbian often feel isolated in a hostile environment and may be subject to prejudice and even violence. And like I said, back in the 90s, I don't know, for some reason my brain's like 95, but I don't know. That boy was killed, murdered, beaten to death, hung on a fence if I remember right, pulled behind a car, but killed because he was gay. And it was like, what is it to them, Jeez. A widely proposed model for the development of gay or lesbian sexual identity goes something like this. Number 1, awareness of same-sex attraction beginning at ages 8 to 11. Now, like I said, we all have a homosexual stage. Not meaning you're having sex with the same sex, but where you prefer to be around the same sex. You're not interested in the other sex yet. So, these are different feelings. These are feelings of you want to kiss a girl or a boy or, so this is a different thing. Number 2, same-sex sexual behaviors, ages 12 to 15. And there are people who experiment. There are people who are bisexual. I consider myself bisexual because I've had some girlfriends. So, not everyone who experiments, with a homosexual relationship is going to end up being full-on homosexual by the time they're 18 or 21 or whatever. Number 3, identification as gay or lesbian, ages 15 to 18. And like I say, when you can't know what you are until you become a sexual being. That's why I'm against allowing children to decide what sex they want to be, because they're not a sexual being yet, and they can't say, hey, I want to be a girl, because they don't know yet. Until you are a mature sexual being, you don't know what your sexuality is. So people saying, yeah, gender affirming care, let them train. No. No. The science says until you are a sexual being, you don't know. Like, there's some experimentation and things when the younger ages. So, and even in adults, I heard of a case, not too awful long ago, of an adult who decided, I want to be a woman, transition to a woman. Oh my gosh, I've never felt more terrible. I want to go back to being a man. Retransitioned to being a man. So even adults don't always know what sex they are and what sex they want to be. So we should not allow children to decide and get sex changes under the age of 18. 100% against that. Science is 100% against that. It should not be a thing. Number 4, disclosure to others, ages 17 to 19 usually. People realize I'm gay and, this is just how it is. And you should accept your child if they're gay. I know of a young man who got kicked out of his home when he came out to his parents. Homeless, living on the streets, sleeping on friends' couches, Is that the life you want for your child? If you love your child, you would want to take care of your child. You want to help your child in any way you can. Encourage them, to be who they are. If your belief system's different than theirs, sorry. Everyone is not the same. Everyone cannot fit in the same mold. That's just a fact of life. But if you love your children, you're going to accept them for who they are, even if it's a disappointment to you. And number 5, development of same-sex romantic relationships between the ages of 18 to 20. And like I said, by that time, usually you know where you stand. However, this model may not accurately reflect the experience of younger gay men, many of whom feel freer than in the past to openly declare their identities. So, gay men usually are more accepted for some reason. Of lesbian and bisexual women whose sexual identity development may be slower and more flexible than that of homosexual men. So women, take a little longer to think about this, and we're a little more flexible, And of ethnic minorities whose traditional communities and culture may espouse strong religious beliefs or stereotypical gender roles. So, if you're in a strong minority ethnic community, you might feel like you can't be who you are, and that's a shame. Leading to strong internal and family conflict. And like I said, that shouldn't even happen. You should be supportive of your child and be happy that they know who they are. Because look at all the people out in the world who have no idea who they are. They're just whoop and out of it and just, running around cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But if you love your child, it's not going to matter what their sexuality is. It's not going to matter. In one study, researchers interviewed 89 women ages 16 to 23. All called themselves either lesbian or bisexual or did not label their sexual identity. The results suggested that, in women, sexual identity is not firmly established at an early age. Few of the women reported exclusively same-sex attractions, and 3 out of 4 failed to recall either childhood indicators of sexual orientation, stability of same-sex attractions, or awareness of same-sex attractions before beginning to consciously question their sexual identity. So, when they're young, they're telling you right here, when they're young, they didn't know, they had no idea. They didn't know until they got older. So again, children don't know their sexual identity because they're not sexual beings yet. Hello, they're not sexually mature. How are you going to know your sexual identity if you're not sexually mature? You can't. Furthermore, when 80% of the women were interviewed again 2 years later, half reported having changed sexual identities more than once. So, again, adults aren't even sure sometimes. 1/3 since the previous interview. So, 1/3 of these people had changed since the previous interview. And these are the young, 18 to 23. So, yeah. 1 out of 4 lesbians had had sexual contact with men during that time. So, like I say, we don't know until we're sexually mature what sex we are. In interviews and questionnaires, 139 young males aged 16 to 26, white, African, gay, American, Latino, and Asian Americans explained what it meant to them to grow up gay or bisexual. So, that is probably helpful for others to figure it out. And maybe if that's a study they got out there, they could look that up and read it. About half felt that they had fully accepted their sexual identities, and most had become sexually and romantically involved with other men. Not necessarily at the same time. So, you might realize this is how I am, but not act on it yet. That might be something you kind of put off. In contrast with their counterparts in earlier generations, who generally did not have same-sex relationships until sometimes well into adulthood. Most of these youths had developed such relationships during high school or college. So, like I say, you really don't know until later when you're sexually mature. Latino youth reported earlier awareness of same-sex attractions than the other groups. Perhaps because, in a culture with rigid gender rules, boys who do not fit the male norm become aware of their differentness early. So that's a shame that, the Latino community expects you to be a macho man. So if you're not, you start realizing pretty young that I'm different and that's going to be a bad thing. Like I say, that's a shame. On the other hand, the first reported male to make sexual encounters, male-to-male sexual encounters among Asian American youths took place about 3 years later than for the other young men. So Asian Americans are a little later into that. And it might be because they want to please the parents. They want to have the grandkids and everything. And there comes a point where they're like, yeah, I just can't do this. This is who I am. This pattern of late sexual imitation, which also has been found among Asian American heterosexuals, so evidently our Asian folks are running a little late, may reflect strong cultural pressures to delay sex until marriage or adulthood, and then to have children who will carry on the family name. So like I said, they're worried about how the family is going to do this. If I come out, what are they going to do? Sexual risk taking. Two major concerns about adolescent sexual activity are the risks of contracting sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, as all the stuff calls them. Diseases spread by sexual contact, which can be acquired by either homosexuals or heterosexuals, and of pregnancy. Because, like we were talking about earlier, even other sexual contact can give you an STD. And again, if you do what it takes to make a baby willingly, you might get pregnant. Most in danger are young people who start sexual activity early, who have multiple partners, who do not use contraceptives, and who have inadequate information or misinformation about sex. So, you need to talk to your kids about this. I would say 9 years old is when you first need to start having that talk. For girls, you can maybe wait a year or so for boys. But like I said, by the time they get to 5th grade, most kids have already kissed somebody and they're kissing. So you need to talk to them about this before it becomes a problem. Again, people who have multiple partners, you need to talk to your child about fidelity, and common decency and love, so they don't think getting some is the way to go about this. Because, I hear trashy people like that, all the time. And it's like, I got 2 guys on. Why? I don't want a bunch of dudes. It's like, I got enough trouble with one. There are people like that, and you need to talk to them about that. That, that is not good. That is a bad way to be. And birth control. Okay? You might not want to deal with that issue, but let's face the facts. Teenagers are full of hormones. They're hormone driven. At some point, they're going to want to do it. And now my family, was like, that was not allowed, of course. So, when I started, I didn't tell them. And then when my mother found out, she was like, oh, we got to get you on the pill now, So, in that way, it was good. But there were mothers of people I knew who, had to talk with them before they even got into high school and said, if you're going to do this, let me know and we'll get you some precaution. And like I said, I was always jealous of those kids whose parents were, there with them, and mom were doing their own thing. And again, kids say things. It's like when my little sister was a kid, one of her friends said, the way you get pregnant is you swallow a feather. So there's a lot of misinformation out there amongst children. So you need to inform them the right way, so that, they don't have problems. And like I would have the talk with my boys once they got to be 10 years old. And as a follow up to the talk, I gave them a book. Gave them the book. Everything you want to know about sex. For they divided it later on to boys and girls. And so I gave them the book and said, here's the book. And they could figure it out on their own time. Because especially boys, as a single mom, they didn't want to talk to mom about sex. Oh my god. But I gave them the book so that way they can, if they have questions, they can look through the book and figure it out. And that was their own little book they get to hold on to, and So I feel like that's a good thing, is to have them have the proper information rather than the misinformation. Like you can't get pregnant your first time, like when my mother knew, and of course she got pregnant the first time, and that you can't get diseases if you wrap it, and that's not necessarily true every time, because stuff happens. Those in socioeconomically disadvantaged communities are more likely to take sexual risks. And why is that? It's because they are in these communities. They're depressed. The life ain't going so great. So this is a outlet for this. Other risk factors are substance use, antisocial behavior, and association with deviant peers. So, if your child is doing these things, you might want to have a talk with them and get them on the right track. Parental monitoring can help reduce these risks, of course, young people who become committed to school achievement and develop positive social skills during the elementary grades are less likely to take sexual risks in adolescence. And now we're assuming a study was done on this, and they're going to get into this a little more. But again, you learn which live. If you have involved parents who are proactive, who are authoritative, and answer their questions, they're going to have a better outcome than, people with permissive parents let them do whatever they want, figure it out themselves, whatever. And parents who are authoritarian say, my way or the highway, don't ask questions, just be seen and not heard, do what I say because I say, because that's not going to work. So the kids with the good parents are going to have a better outcome because they're going to be more well adjusted, and they're going to be, able to handle life a little better. Among 400 Seattle public school children, many of them in high risk areas, those who participated in a program that promoted academic success and attachment to school showed them how to resist trouble and helped them find positive options, but never mentioned sex, were less likely than peers who did not participate in the program to engage in risky sexual behavior, contract an STD, become pregnant, or have a baby by age 12. So, the better the parents are, the more the parents are involved, less likely it is that the children are going to run into these problems later on. So like I say, get involved. Don't be ashamed or shy or bashful to talk about sex with your kids, because it's going to happen. Those little people are going to turn into big people, and it's going to happen. So, you be the source of information rather than their friend down the street who's feeding them stuff that they heard from a third person, and, then they end up with an STD or pregnant. So, be there. Early sexual activity. Why do some adolescents become sexually active at an early age? Various factors, including early entrance into puberty, poverty, poor school performance, lack of academic and career goals, a history of sexual abuse, or parental neglect, and cultural or family patterns of early sexual experience may play a part. And now that's a shame. But these things can play a part into children deciding that they are ready for this activity at an early age. The foundation for choices about sexual activity may be laid before adolescence. Parental monitoring during pre-adolescence affects the age at which adolescents start dating and begin sexual activity. So if the child is being left home alone on a Friday night at 10, 11, and 12 years old, as they get older, they're like, oh, well, they're going out on Friday. You can come on over. Yeah. No. Your child should not be left home alone until they are legally old enough to babysit, which is 14 for most people. You know, if you know the children's work age, you know, you got to sign the paper at 14 they can work. When they're 14, they can be left home alone. And by then, hopefully you have talked to them about sex. Another powerful influence is perception of peer group norms. So if they think their friends are all doing it, they're going to want to do it too. Among 1,389 sixth graders in Philadelphia public schools, the strongest predictor of which students would begin sexual activity by the end of the school year was the intention to do so. And that intention was most strongly influenced by the belief that most of their friends had already done so. And I knew a girl who was going around bragging about how she was doing it with this guy that she knew from a band. And then come to find out that was all a lie. So, you know, but a lot of us were like, oh man, she's doing it now, you know. Self-esteem works in opposite ways for boys and for girls. And I think we all know that. Boys have an easier time of it. Girls, we beat ourselves up pretty hard. Our self-esteem is rough. In a longitudinal study of 188 Minneapolis area 7th graders who reported being virgins, boys with high self-esteem were 2.5 times as likely as other boys to have sex by 9th grade. So the boys who have higher self-esteem and, you know, are liked more, are more apt to be having sex. Sorry about that. Got a call. Okay. We were talking about the difference between girls and boys. We're talking about the boys with high self-esteem were more likely to have sex. Whereas girls with high self-esteem were 3 times as likely to report still being virgins. So see, the girls with high self-esteem are saving themselves. They know that that's an important gift that they're going to give, and so they're not giving it away. You know? So it's different for girls and boys. And you got to talk to those boys and let them know swinging around all the time, doing as many people as you can, is not a good thing. It doesn't make you cool. It makes you, you know, STD bait and baby daddy bait, you know. So, you know, talk to them just like you would your girls. Girls, and to a lesser extent boys, often feel under pressure to engage in activities they do not feel ready for. I think we've all felt like that. If you think back to, you know, when you were starting these things, you didn't really feel ready, but other people would do it, and you felt like, well, I guess I'm old enough to do it. So, you know, talk to your kids about peer pressure too. That just because, you know, as my parents said about, just because if your friends jump off a bridge, would you do it too? But you don't have to put it that way because everybody's just like, oh my God, you know. But explain to them that, you know, just because your friends are doing it doesn't mean it's what's right for you, you know. Most sexually experienced teenage girls, 61%, say that their first male partner was 1 to 3 years older than they were. So a lot of this older guys trying to get the younger girls. And 20% say he was at least 4 years older. And to me, that's right in the line there, because a high school senior and a, you know, high school freshman, okay, they're going to the same school, they have access to each other. But when you got guys 4 years older than girls, like in middle school, or adult males on high school, you know, that's inappropriate, and that's a problem in my book. So again, talk to your kids about the appropriateness of relationships and age, you know, and things like that, because you're going to need to have things in common if your relationship's going to last. Although 93% of teenage girls say their first intercourse was voluntary, unforced, about 1/4 of these girls say they did not want it. So even they went along with it and they did it, they really didn't want it. So again, talk to your girls about that kind of pressure. Like, you know, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. If he's pressuring you and you feel pressured in it, then no, just say no. You don't have to do it. You can get out of the car, walk over to somewhere else, walk over. Everyone's got cell phones now. Most kids do. Call for a ride. You know, you don't have to do it. In surveys of Massachusetts high school girls, about 1 out of 5 reported having been physically or sexually abused by a date. So 1 in 5. So again, you need to talk to your girls about protection. They sell mace. They have rape whistles. I have a rape whistle in my purse. You know, I used to have some mace that's all gone now, but I just never got any more because, yeah, I'm an old lady now, you know. But still, it happens to old ladies too. But I feel with my little gimpy cane, I'm pretty safe. But I might not be. We don't know. And these girls tended to have had early first intercourse. So once they've been sexually assaulted, it becomes in their mind, it's like, well, I'm ruined now. Their self-esteem goes, and so they're more likely to engage in early intercourse. And that's, of course, a shame. And again, if that happens to your child, boy, girl, whatever, you need to get them help. You need to get them the psychiatric help they need to overcome this trauma. You know, don't sweep it under the rug, pretend it didn't happen. You know, get them the help that they need. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. I hope this has helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. And we got some eclipse happening over here. It's getting a little dark. You know, I don't know when it's happening in your area, but it's getting ready to happen in my area. So, you know, please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, you can go to my YouTube and subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me out any more, you can go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.